Well, hello, everyone. Bonjour, tout le monde. Before I begin, I want to thank many members of our caucus who have joined us here today, including Minister LeBlanc, Minister Virani, and others that are here. And I especially want to take a moment to thank our guests who have joined us, Deborah, Amira, Mohammed, Jocelyn, Debbie, Dr. Amal, and Brian. Thank you for your advocacy, your leadership, and the work that you do on behalf of communities from coast to coast to coast. Over the past number of years, we have witnessed an alarming rise in hate here in Canada and around the world. Whether it is online or in our streets, hateful words and actions are having a devastating impact on our communities and our entire country. Whether it's places of worship being attacked, communities being divided, or even losing loved ones, we have seen firsthand what hate does. And when we look at the pain and damage that hate causes, one thing is clear. We cannot allow hate to go unchecked. The cost of inaction is far too great. As a government, we have been absolutely clear. Hate, racism, and discrimination have absolutely no place in Canada. But we know right now these are challenging times for Canadians. And not everyone is feeling safe, whether it is in their communities, their places of worship, or even in their homes. Let us be very clear. Everyone, no matter where you are from, how you pray, or who you love, deserves to feel safe. To that end, today we are launching Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate. The plan represents a $273 million commitment from our government that will support over 20 initiatives, first and foremost to empower communities that identify and respond to hate, to support victims and protect survivors, and to build community trust and improve institutional readiness. Today we're launching a historic, a whole-of-government approach. And for Canadians, this means better data tracking on hate crimes through StatsCan, increased resources for law enforcement so that they can understand the needs and concerns of diverse communities, reforms and education for our justice system to better inform how to deal with hate crimes, more funding to financially support survivors and victims of hate crimes, to ensure communities have the resources they need to feel safe and secure, as well as initiatives that will build trust between communities that experience hate and the institutions that respond to the incidents of hate. Just to give you an example of the kind of work that we're doing under this plan, last year we provided the Canadian Council of Muslim Women with funding to develop a project aimed to countering offline and online hate targeting Muslim women and girls. As a result of this funding, they were able to conduct over 100 anti-hate workshops in cities right across this country to educate over 7,000 people, not just how to recognize hate, but also how to properly respond to the incidents of hate when they occur. This is about being proactive, this is about security, and this is about building trust. And this is why this plan was developed through extensive community engagement to ensure that it truly reflects the needs and priorities of communities in Canada that experience hate. It comes out of the 2 national summits that we held on Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. It builds on the work that Minister Ian is doing with her action plan for 2S LGBTQI+ community. It goes hand in hand with the work that Minister LeBlanc is leading through the security program, as well as the work that Minister Virani is leading through online harms. As I said, this is a comprehensive plan that is fundamentally about security and unity. Today, we're stepping up and doing what any responsible government would, fighting to keep Canadians safe. But it's also important to acknowledge that while we're doing the responsible thing and fighting hate, and in contrast, we have some politicians like Mr. Poilievre and members of the Conservative Party that incite hate. They incite hate against women when he targets his YouTube videos specifically at men who hate women. They incite hate against racialized Canadians when they meet with white supremacists. And they incite hate when they pander to far-right conspiracy theorists at the expense of some of the most vulnerable, like our queer youth. And the thing is, Mr. Poilievre understands the consequences of hate. Like many Canadians, they have seen the horrific impact it has on communities and our country. And yet, he still chooses to promote and support those who spread hate. And in doing so, they're putting our communities and our country at risk. It's not just irresponsible, it's dangerous, and it costs lives. There's only one way to combat hate. That is by doing it together. I know there is a better path forward if we work together. Canada deserves this future. It's up to all of us to stand up against hate and to build a Canada where everyone feels safe, to reflect on what we can do better when we bring people together, because it's not just the right thing to do, it's a Canadian thing to do. That is the vision of Canada that our government is working to build as we launch this action plan. Thank you, merci, and I'll turn it over to my Parliamentary Secretary, Sameer Zuberi.
Merci tout le monde d'être ici et merci à Madame la Ministre pour cette très importante annonce. Et tous les ministres d'être ici aujourd'hui, tous les invités partout au Canada qui sont rassemblés ici aujourd'hui pour cette annonce. Donc, la haine augmente ici et dans le monde entier, en ligne ou dans nos rues. Cela a un impact dévastateur. La haine, le racisme, la discrimination n'ont pas leur place au Canada. Ces temps sont difficiles pour de nombreux Canadiens aujourd'hui. Tout le monde mérite de se sentir en sécurité, peu importe d'où il vient. Aujourd'hui, nous lançons le premier plan d'action canadien contre la haine. Ce plan représente un engagement de 273 millions de dollars du gouvernement canadien. Il financera 20 initiatives pour prévenir les crimes haineux et soutenir les victimes. Nous voulons améliorer la sécurité communautaire et contrer la radicalisation efficacement. Cela vient de mois de consultation avec des communautés affectées par la haine. Nous faisons ce qu'un gouvernement responsable doit faire pour protéger les Canadiens. Malheureusement, Pierre Poilievre incite la haine contre des diverses communautés au Canada. Il cible les femmes avec des vidéos et des messages sur les réseaux sociaux. Il rencontre aussi des suprémacistes blancs et soutient des théories du complot dangereux. M. Poilievre connaît les conséquences de la haine sur les communautés de notre pays. En choisissant cela, il met nos communautés et notre pays en danger. Ce n'est pas seulement irresponsable, c'est réellement dangereux pour tous, nous tous. Nous devons lutter contre la haine ensemble, car cela concerne nous tous. C'est notre responsabilité de bâtir un Canada plus sûr pour tout le monde. C'est la chose canadienne à faire dans ces moments difficiles. C'est la vision de notre gouvernement souhaite réaliser aujourd'hui. Nous sommes toujours plus forts lorsque nous travaillons ensemble. Merci.
Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Comme mes collègues ont bien dit, au Canada et un peu partout à travers le monde, nous avons constaté une augmentation des crimes et incidents motivés par la haine, un phénomène exacerbé par des conflits qui ont eu lieu à des milliers de kilomètres de nous. Le Canada est un pays accueillant où des millions de personnes au fil des générations ont trouvé refuge. La diversité et le vivre ensemble, ça fait partie de nos valeurs profondes en tant que Canadiens. Nous devons faire tout ce qui est dans notre pouvoir pour lutter contre toute forme de haine ou d'intolérance. All Canadians deserve to be safe and to feel safe, regardless of where they live, work, gather, or pray. As Public Safety Minister, ensuring that this is the case is obviously my #1 focus. And I know my colleagues gathered with us here today are equally invested in this important work. Over the last year, we have listened to communities most impacted by hate crimes and what we as a government could do to help them better protect themselves and their institutions. A big focus of our discussion was the Security Infrastructure Program, which many communities rely on to fund security measures at their institutions. Since 2017, the annual permanent funding dedicated to this program has increased at an unprecedented pace, totaling more than 10 times the original budget. But it's not just about the money. There are administrative hurdles, too, that we wanted to address. And today, I'm pleased to say we have made some major improvements to the way this program operates. The program will also have a new name. From here onwards, it will be called the Canada Community Security Program. In addition, I'm pleased to announce that on October 1st, we will launch a new call for proposals for organizations, and we invite all eligible organizations to apply. Here are a few of the changes we've made to make the Canada Community Security Program function better and meet the needs of the communities we've heard from over the last number of months. Firstly, we've made the program more flexible and the application process easier. After consultations with members of several at-risk communities, it was clear that changes were needed so that support could be delivered in a more timely and a more efficient manner. Our government recognizes that communities may need to access funding throughout the year, and that need may not line up perfectly with a call for proposals. That's why we'll also now accept applications throughout the year on an ongoing and continuous basis. Deuxièmement, les bureaux, les espaces administratifs, les cimetières et les garderies sont désormais inclus comme bénéficiaires admissibles en vertu des règles révisées du programme. Troisièmement, nous permettrons désormais aux organisations de demander des subventions plutôt que des contributions strictement remboursables, ce qui réduira le fardeau financier pour les plus petites organisations. Fourth, in exceptional circumstances, expenses incurred prior to the signing of the contribution agreement will now be eligible for reimbursement. Fifth, we've increased the maximum funding that organizations can apply for, as well as the contribution the Government of Canada can make. Applicants can now submit projects for up to $1.5 million, and the Government of Canada can now cover up to 70% of that amount. They will also be able to add up funding from different orders of government, in other words, stacking up to 100% of project costs. And lastly, we've made permanent the ability to get funding to hire accredited security guards on a time-limited basis. To supplement these important changes, we're making an additional investment of $65 million, and $16 million will be made available this year to fund the upcoming intakes. As I said at the outset, the safety of all Canadians is our utmost priority. With the new Canada Community Security Program, we're making it easier for communities in need of support to access that support when they need it most, so they can live without fear. Thank you, merci beaucoup, and I now have the privilege to introduce Brian Bronfman as our first testimonial. He's the president of At Peace Network for Social Harmony and the Brian Bronfman Family Foundation. Brian.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, bon après-midi. I am not here to talk about Israel. I'm not here to talk about Gaza. I'm not here to talk about hostages, ceasefires, terrorist attacks, rockets, bombings, or any of the enormously important and tragic things that are impacting not only the parts of the world in question, but the cohesion and sense of security in Canadian society. What I am here to talk about is how to generate hope and solutions for our communities in Canada in the face of the polarization and hatred that result from deeply divisive influences such as these? How do we develop hope and solutions in a context of truly disturbing levels of anti-Semitism with a Jewish population that forms 1% of Canada, but is the target of 2/3 of its hate crimes, and growing levels of anti-Palestinian and anti-Arab hatred, not to mention anti-queer, anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, anti-Asian, and other forms of racism? I believe that all forms of hatred tie into each other. And you can't single one out while presenting yourself as an advocate for social harmony and justice. This also means, though, that a similar solution exists in countering these blights on our society, since they can all be diminished and, better yet, prevented through the creation of opportunities to connect, to talk and listen, to develop mutual understanding, to break down stereotypes, and to create empathy. The case of my relationship with Dr. Amal Elsana Alh'jooj is an example of the power of this sort of connection. Before meeting Amal, I hadn't had any significant relationships with people of the Muslim faith, let alone Bedouins or Palestinians such as her. But Amal and I approached each other with an open spirit and a curiosity, which led to conversations and mutual discovery. Through dialogue, we recognized that despite our different faiths, cultures, socioeconomic backgrounds, and genders, we did share something much more important: common values and priorities centered on respect, inclusion, social justice, and the embracing of difference as a contributor to the richness of our lives, rather than as something to be feared and rejected. Through these 20 years of conversations on every imaginable topic, some of them very challenging, particularly since last October, we've created the trust and caring that have led to a cherished friendship along with a wonderful working relationship. These conversations, plus consultations with multiple sectors in our society, led to Amal's organization Pledge, creating the Solidarity Dialogues, in partnership with my organization, the Peace Network for Social Harmony. Dr. Elsana will describe this project, which fights hatred, violence, racism, and division by establishing safe spaces for difficult conversations on divisive issues. People are suffering, and this is an effort not to ignore or to silence it, but to give them a voice and find a solution through safe and effective communication. We also hope it will bring down the temperature, which has risen far too high because of polarization. Et juste avant de céder la parole à Amal Elsana, je veux mentionner aux médias francophones qui pourraient être présents que ça serait mon plaisir de répondre à vos questions sur ces sujets, incluant les dialogues de solidarité, le réseau pour la paix et l'harmonie sociale, et mon amitié avec Amal et l'influence que cela a eue sur nos vies personnelles et professionnelles. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Brian. Well, for me, it's more personal. I'm here as a civil society leader. I'm here as a professor. I'm here as a Canadian Palestinian who experienced personal suffering, losing members of my relatives and families in Gaza, and losing my close friend, peace activist Vivian Silver in Kibbutz Be'eri. I have been focusing on peace building, bringing people together, building bridges between communities for the last 30 years in my life, abroad and here in Canada. Since October, the rise of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and the hate towards Palestinian people is in the rise. This is a big concern for us as Canadians. There is no place for hate. And my Palestinian students and my colleagues will report very often about the feeling and the reality of not being safe, either in their campuses or in their workplaces. It's hard for me to see the pain in the eyes of my Jewish students, and my Palestinian students in the campus. I feel responsible to protect them and make sure that the space and the safe space is there for them, both as Palestinians and Jewish. For the last 2 decades, I have been partnering and working with my colleague, friend, and really dear person, Brian Bronfman, to build bridges between our own communities. It's not an easy work, especially these days. It's very challenging. But what brought us together is that we both are committed to our humanity, to the vision that brings people together, to the vision that makes our society safe for everyone, doesn't matter what's their background or nationality or ethnicity or color or gender. Last May, as doers, we decided not to avoid dealing with what's happening in our city, Montreal, where we walk in the street and feel the tension that you might cut with a knife. We decided to start doing something. And we started training leaders from 4 sectors: faith leaders, people from the campus, and civil society leaders. We finished the training of the first cohort, and now our participants are about to start their community solidarity dialogues among their communities and across communities. With that project, our vision is that we can implement this project across Canada. We want to see solidarity dialogues in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Vancouver, in Montreal, and any other place. We want to expand the tent that will include everybody and that will never leave anyone behind. I really want to extend my thanks to the Canadian Race Relations who supported this initiative when it was only an idea, Mohammed. And I really want to thank you because you were brave and you gave us the right opportunity to start moving forward. Thank you and hope for better times for everyone in Canada and abroad.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. My name is Debbie Owusu-Akyeeah, and I'm the co-director of policy and advocacy at Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights. Prior to joining Action Canada, I was the executive director of the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity for 4 years, where I advocated and supported queer and trans youth across the country. It's something that's been discussed already, but hate has grown in this country significantly, and hate targeting to us LGBTQ people in particular has grown. This hate comes in the context of a global backlash against 2S LGBTQ+ rights and freedoms, and in a time when transgender healthcare specifically is being used as a wedge issue to push people towards radicalization against equality and human rights protections. It's also important to recognize that those who bear the heaviest weight of queerphobic and transphobic hate are 2S LGBTQ people who are also impacted by racism, including Black, Indigenous, and other racialized people. For those like myself, who've worked closely with queer and trans youth, we know exactly how important early intervention in teaching about gender and sexual diversity is in disrupting oppression and discrimination. We also know that affirming adults and affirming education is life-saving for queer and trans youth in the long run. And we know that it's for those exact same reasons that people who don't want to see queer and trans youth thrive target education and young people in far-right anti-2S LGBTQ hate. So combating this kind of hate means combating the things that actually try to keep our communities apart. And the investments announced today are going to provide some of the tools to do just that. I look forward to working with other advocates and community leaders to ensure we all have an equitable and safer society for people in Canada, because together we can build the world without discrimination we truly deserve. Thank you. Thank you.
We're ready to take any questions if you may have.
Yeah, Ministers, just a quick question just on how the funding works. So you mentioned the $273 million from budget 2023, and then $65 million came up. So is this $65 million for the changes brand new money that's being tacked onto that $273 million, or a part of that overall envelope?
If I may, let me just first say, we all recognize that hate has consequences, and as a government, we're taking a very tangible way that we're addressing hate, and that's why we put forward Canada's first ever first ever action plan on combating hate. This is a $273 million that we put forward in this budget, and it's going to do three things. First and foremost, it's actually going to prevent communities from facing and making sure we actually prevent hate. So making sure that communities can have tools and resources to be able to actually identify hate. Second, it's about supporting communities that are facing hate as we speak. That's the work that my colleague, Minister LeBlanc, is doing with this announcement that he made about the community security program. And third is around building trust, building readiness within our institutions. So this is part of the entire plan. It's a comprehensive plan. This is not just, we know you can't, there's not a single way that we can address hate. We need a comprehensive plan, take a whole of government approach. The work that my colleague, Minister Virani, is doing on online harm, the work that Minister Ian is doing on the 2S LGBTQI action plan, the work that our colleagues behind me are doing to actually lead this conversation to support Canadians right now.
Yeah, just with respect, Minister, that doesn't really answer the question. The $65 million, is that part of that $273 million, or is this new money? That's just what I'm trying to ask.
So the $65 million that Minister LeBlanc has announced is part of the $273 million that we have put forward.
C'est une annonce importante pour aider les communautés à se protéger. Vous en profitez pour faire un détour durant votre présentation du gouvernement, de l'argent du gouvernement, pour attaquer le chef de l'opposition. Est-ce que c'est la place pour faire ça?
Ce que on peut souligner, c'est qu'effectivement, on a tous des responsabilités comme élus, spécialement les responsabilités qui touchent une chef d'une partie. Ce que le ministre Khera a bien souligné, c'était aussi souligné par le ministre LeBlanc, c'est qu'effectivement, lorsqu'on voit les débats en Chambre ou à l'extérieur de la Chambre, on voit une situation où il y a quelques-uns des élus, et parmi spécialement les conservateurs, qui sont en train de, au lieu de rassembler les gens, ils sont en train de diviser les gens. Et on peut voir même avec les débats qui se déroulaient juste hier, sur ma propre initiative, le projet de loi 63, sur les préjudices en ligne, qu'il y a une grande division en Chambre. Oui, il y a des inquiétudes parmi le Bloc québécois. Oui, il y a quelques-unes des inquiétudes parmi le Parti néo-démocrate. Mais les deux partis et nous autres, comme libéraux, sont devant, en principe, le projet qui vise une diminution des préjudices en ligne qui touche spécialement les haines, mais les autres sujets comme les enfants et les jeunes adolescents. Mais ce qu'on écoute parmi les conservateurs, c'est un dialogue complètement différent. Quand on vise une situation qui n'est pas propre, on ne vise pas le problème comme tel. Le problème, c'est simplement avec les enfants. Si vous croyez, franchement, qu'une personne qui est une jeune, qui peut-être est noire, qui peut-être elle porte un hijab, si vous croyez qu'elle est simplement menacée, par exemple, par les prédateurs sexuels, vous êtes en erreur. C'est si clair que ça. Parce que les adolescents comme ça, qui ont une intersection comme Debbie vient de mentionner, par exemple, eux, ils sont menacés par les autres menaces qui touchent leur race, leur foi, leur identité comme telle. Et c'est ça qu'on a touché. Et ce qu'on trouve, c'est qu'on cherche une vision où tous les élus peuvent rassembler ensemble pour lutter contre les mêmes problèmes. Au lieu de diviser les gens, de promouvoir les programmes comme Amal et Brian viennent d'établir et de les promouvoir partout au pays. C'est ça notre défi, c'est ça un défi pour les libéraux et on cherche les partenaires. On a quelques-uns des partenaires, on cherche un autre de la part de l'opposition officielle. Merci.
Sur un sujet différent, si je peux me permettre, avec ce qui se passe en Ukraine, on a vu le président Biden faire une déclaration à l'ONU. On prévoit du côté des États-Unis où on songe à permettre à l'Ukraine d'utiliser des armes américaines pour frapper en sol russe. Monsieur Leblanc, je vous pose la question à vous parce que c'est un peu lié à la sécurité. Est-ce que le Canada devrait faire la même chose?
Bien, liées à la sécurité. Je vous donne plein crédit pour essayer d'insérer cette question-là. Christian, alors plein point pour vous là-dedans. Nous avons toujours, comme gouvernement, appuyé les efforts du gouvernement de l'Ukraine, du président Zelensky. Le Canada est énormément investi afin d'appuyer les Ukrainiens. Des petites communautés comme des grandes communautés ont accueilli des milliers de personnes de l'Ukraine. C'est une source de fierté pour ces communautés-là. Mais en ce qui a trait au débat, j'ai pris note moi aussi des discussions aux Nations Unies. La bonne nouvelle, c'est que le premier ministre est à New York pour discuter précisément de cet enjeu et d'autres questions. Je crois que la ministre des Affaires étrangères est possiblement là aussi. Alors, c'est vraiment à eux autres que vos collègues à New York devront poser cette question-là.
Minister, what we've got here as well too. Last year there was talk of the gun buyback having a bit more concrete update in fall 2024. We're now into fall 2024. We've seen $67 million spent on the program, but no guns bought back. What's going on there?
So the good news is we're just at the beginning of the fall, actually. The summer just ended. I think I understand your impatience. I share that impatience. The good news is that those concrete steps that we spoke about in terms of buying back, retrieving, and destroying, disposing of those military-style assault weapons that have no place on the streets of Canada, that will begin in the next month, or month and a half. We'll have more information, those concrete details that I know you're looking forward to in the coming weeks. But we're very much on track to fulfill that obligation we made to Canadians. A lot of work has been done. Those expenditures were precisely so that we can meet the obligations we made to Canadians in terms of those timelines, and I'm not pessimistic at all.
Do you expect guns to be starting the buyback process to begin within the next month, month and a half?
I will be announcing the details of the first phase of the program that will begin this fall as planned. So you shouldn't be pessimistic at all. We're very much on track in terms of those timelines. Mr. Duclos and I have done a lot of work in this regard, and I look forward to providing those details in the coming weeks, but to reassuring you that the commitments we made about starting to retrieve, buy back, and dispose of those guns this fall is very much on track. And the second phase of the program, as we said, will roll out. That's the individual buyback from Canadian gun owners. That will begin exactly as we said in 2025. So I'm not pessimistic about our ability to effectively deliver that program.
Last question, dernière question.
Merci beaucoup. Perfect. Thank you.
Merci.